Okay, let's dive in. For years, when you think energy-hungry tech, Bitcoin mining, right? That often comes up.
Mm-hmm. This has been the big one for a while.
But what if something else is catching up? Maybe even about to dwarf its power demands. Something, well, pretty central to the future.
That's exactly where this deep dive takes us. We're looking at some fascinating research coming out of Amsterdam. Alex de Vries-Gao.
Right.
And it projects this, massive and really rapid shift in energy consumption.
And the headline finding is, it's pretty startling, isn't it? This research is saying artificial intelligence, its energies is growing so fast it could actually surpass Bitcoin mining.
Yeah, the total consumption.
Potentially by the end of 2025.
That's the projection. It's a huge claim. So our mission here is really to unpack what the source material tells us about this growth, why it's supposedly happening so fast and what some of the implications might be. We're sticking strictly to what's in these sources, of course.
Okay, got it. So let's start setting the stage, that central projection.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of energy number are we actually talking about for AI by late 2025?
So the research project's AI could demand, get this, 23 gigawatts of power by then.
23 gigawatts. Okay, that sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
How does the source help us, wrap our heads around that number?
Well, it gives some helpful context. That 23 gigawatts, it's roughly the same as the total energy used by all data centers currently running in the UK.
Wow. Okay. All UK data centers just for AI.
Just for AI, yeah. Think about that. And then if you compare it directly to Bitcoin, which is the other benchmark here,
right.
The source points out this 23 GW projection for AI is basically double the current estimated demand of the entire Bitcoin network.
Double? Bitcoin's sitting around 10 GW now, is that right?
Yeah, around 10 GW. So AI potentially doubling that. It's a huge leap in scale. And the speed, well, that's key too.
Okay, double Bitcoin's current energy use, possibly within, 18 months or so? So what's driving this? What does the research say is making AI such an energy heavyweight so quickly?
The primary driver, according to this source, it really boils down to one thing. Hardware.
The chips, like the new, really powerful processors everyone's talking about.
Exactly. The material specifically mentions things like Nvidia's Grace Blackwell series. These aren't just, a little faster. They're built for incredibly complex calculations.
And what are these powerful chips actually doing that takes so much juice?
Well, two main things. First, training these huge, large language models, like the ones behind ChatGPT and similar tech. That takes immense power.
Okay, the training phase.
And then there's running what they call inference systems. That's basically using the trained model on new data, generating answers, making predictions. Both parts, training and inference, demand a ton of computational power.
Which translates directly into needing a lot of electricity.
A huge appetite for electricity, yeah.
And all this hardware, it lives inside data centers, right? Which, they're already pretty significant energy users globally.
Oh, absolutely. The source notes that data centers today account for maybe 1% to 2% of global electricity use.
Which is comparable to the entire airline industry's energy consumption. So already a big slice.
Right.
But these projections, and AI is a big part of this, suggest that slice is about to get dramatically bigger very quickly.
How much bigger are we talking for data centers overall? What does the research project?
Globally, it suggests data center electricity use could skyrocket. The number mentioned is nearly 945 terawatt hours by 2030.
Wow. And what about the U.S. specifically? Does it break that down?
It does, and the picture there is particularly striking. Data center electricity consumption in the U.S., it could triple by 2030.
Tripper.
Yeah, going from about 2.5% of national power use today, potentially up to as high as 7.5%.
7.5% of all U.S. electricity just for data centers. That really puts it in perspective. Okay, now the source also talks about how AI and Bitcoin use energy differently, not just the total amount. What's the difference in their energy profiles?
That's a really crucial distinction the research makes. Bitcoin mining, it's described as having this relatively stable, kind of constant power draw. Right, specialized chips running all the time.
Exactly, those ASICs, often spread out, distributed networks running 24/7. But AI's power demand, it's much more variable.
Variable how?
It spikes massively during those big training cycles, then it fluctuates during inference. And critically, it's highly concentrated in these enormous centralized data centers, not spread out like Bitcoin mining often is.
And that concentration, that has different impacts on the power grid, I imagine. Where the power comes from.
It really does. Bitcoin miners, they often have flexibility, right? They can go find places with cheap power, maybe surplus renewables somewhere.
Okay.
But these massive AI data centers, their sheer concentrated demand puts direct pressure on the existing utility grids right where they're located. The source specifically notes that in the US, utilities are now facing, well, some big decisions just to keep up.
What kind of decisions? What steps are they considering, according to the research?
Well, it mentions plans for new gas-fired power plants being discussed.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And even exploring the revival of some nuclear projects. These are mentioned as potential responses utilities are actually weighing up just to meet this surging, very localized demand.
That sounds like a bit of a paradox, though. Isn't AI tech supposed to be getting more efficient all the time? Yet the total energy use is projected to explode. Does the source get into that?
It does, yeah. It's fascinating. The research explicitly points this out. Even as the AI technology itself becomes more efficient, like you get more calculations per watt of energy.
Right.
It's widespread deployment, the sheer scale of how much it's being used across more apps, more users, that's driving this massive increase in the total energy needed overall.
So efficiency goes up, but total use goes up even more because we just use it so much more.
Exactly. And the analysis actually puts a name to this, right?
It does.
Yeah, it's presented as this really powerful modern example of Jevons paradox.
Jevons paradox.
Yeah.
Remind me.
It's that economic principle where, counterintuitively, increases in efficiency can lead to increased overall consumption because the tech gets cheaper, easier to use, so it gets adopted way more widely, driving total demand way up.
Got it. Okay, let's zoom out again then. Thinking globally. Where is this data center growth, driven largely by AI, most heavily concentrated, according to the source?
The research highlights two main players, the US and China. Together, they're expected to account for almost 80% of the projected growth in global data center demand by 2030.
80% just between the US and China. Wow. What about Europe?
Europe's projected growth is described as more modest comparatively, still significant growth, around 70% by 2030, but not on the same scale as the US and China projections.
Okay. Is there any positive news in the source regarding the type of energy these data centers might use?
Yes, actually. The source does mention a pretty significant positive trend there. It says the share of renewables powering data centers is expected to grow quite a bit.
Oh, good. From what to what?
From about 27% today, projected to reach 50% by 2030.
So half renewable powered by 2030.
That's the projection, yeah.
Yeah.
With wind and solar specifically called out as the key drivers behind that shift.
Okay, so putting this all together from the source material, we have this picture of incredibly rapid, massive growth in AI's energy needs. It's driven by hardware concentrated in these huge data centers, which puts real pressure on grids, and it kind of perfectly illustrates this Jevons paradox, efficiency gains leading to higher total use. Looking at all that, what are the big questions or challenges that the source leaves us thinking about?
Well, the research really surfaces several major questions, yeah. First, just the fundamental one for the energy grid. Can our existing infrastructure actually handle this? Can it keep pace with this kind of accelerating demand without major strain or, huge new investment?
Right, and tied into that, I guess, is how governments respond. Will they manage to prioritize rolling out clean energy fast enough to meet this new demand?
Or, will the urgency push them towards relying more heavily on fossil fuels like those potential new gas plants mentioned? That's a huge fork in the road.
Yeah.
And then there's an important point about equity that the analysis touches on. What's the potential impact on developing countries?
How so?
Well, many already have strained electricity grids, right? And this global surge in demand for energy, driven by AI in wealthier nations, could potentially exacerbate those existing challenges, maybe affect resource competition.
That's a really important angle. So, okay, to kind of sum up the core takeaway from digging into this source material, this incredible explosion in AI's capabilities, its computational power, it comes with a serious and rapidly growing energy price tag.
Yeah, a cost measured in gigawatts.
And one that seems poised, based on this research, to potentially overtake even Bitcoin's significant energy footprint, maybe very soon.
And what's really interesting, I think, is the final thought this material kind of leaves you chewing on, as AI demand keeps climbing the steep curve, really showcasing Jevons paradox on a grand scale. Can our global energy systems innovate fast enough? Can we find that sustainable balance while still powering this AI-driven future? That really remains an open and pretty critical question raised by this analysis.